Okay, well then we'll get started. Welcome everyone to the May Diamond Valley Writers Guild meeting. I wanted to first off introduce our interim vice president of the Guild, Kevin Kindle. Kevin, wave and say something real quick just so they can see you.
Hi, everybody. Glad to step in. Hopefully I can do the position proper.
I'm sure you'll do just fine, Kevin. There he is right there. Sorry about that. So a couple of quick announcements. The logo submissions. We do have some wonderful submissions for the Guild logo. We're planning on creating our own rather than just using clip art like we always have. And we're going to close the submissions. If anyone is an artist or a graphic artist and wants to submit a logo suggestion, we would love to take them through the end of June, because we're hoping to start narrowing down in July and get them out for vote for all the members sometime by August is kind of the goal. Also, I just wanted to give you some numbers on our Zoom meetings, these hybrid meetings. The last 3 months, in March, we had 32 attendees. In April, we had 42. And in May, we had 38. So I feel our numbers are really good. I'm so excited. The Guild is growing. Lots of new faces in the room today. So those of you, if it's your first time in the room, welcome. We're glad that you were able to make it. It's usually about evenly split on Zoom versus in-room attendance, pretty close. So we're seeming to, hoping at least, to serve the entire membership's needs. Member at large, Lynette.
I muted myself and then couldn't find the button again. Sorry about that, everybody. I want to let you all know that our YouTube channel is up and running. And not only that, but we have January through April. All those meetings are now available to view. So if you missed any of those speakers or you want to rehear it, they'll be out there. And of course, I wanted to all let you guys know that our board meetings are open for anybody to attend. Our next one is July 11th at 6:30 in the evening. Since some of us work and some of us are retired, we've had to switch to an evening meeting. So if you're interested in what's going on, feel free to pop in. Always welcome. Membership. Okay, so there are great reasons. You can be here today and not be a member. No big deal, but there are some benefits to being a member. You get the opportunity to submit your work to our online literary publication, which is Straight Jackets Magazine. You get to have our books listed on our Guild members book page with links to purchase, which is really cool because somebody goes out to check out the Guild. They go, oh, let's go see what kind of authors they got. Boom, you've got a presence right there. Included in your membership. It's not extra. They can click on the link, go purchase your books. And, we've got a community here, not only locally there in Hemet, but like Kevin's in Canada, I'm in Montana. We're truly global now, which is very exciting. So one of the things I love about our Guild is, for an annual fee of $25 for a regular member, we have discounts for college students of their $15 a year. In high school students, $10 a year, because we want all ages to love writing as much as we do. We want to make sure that membership is available to everybody at a price that they can afford. And, there's 2 ways we can pay, either using PayPal or just send a check to the Guild. And for the Zoom people, I'll go ahead and post that information in our chat. Also want to remind everybody, if you are publishing something new this year, please send me like a picture of your book jacket, a little blurb about what your book's about, and a link for purchase, because I like to send out those monthly shout outs where we can celebrate along with you guys. I think that's all that's on my list right now. If not, Michelle, I'll raise my hand and say I forgot something. So.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Webmaster, I don't think Lucia has joined us yet, so I'll make an announcement on her behalf. Anyone who has not renewed their membership for 2023 that has a book on the website, those will be coming down at the end of June. So if you have a book on the website and you forgot, I will be sending out a reminder email, probably tomorrow or Monday. And unfortunately, because it's of guild benefit, we have to take down those who are not members. So we'd love everybody to renew that have books on the website. So aren't that many of you? I don't even know if anyone is here in this meeting, but whoever it is, you'll get an email from me and hopefully you'll be able to renew. Okay, let's talk about, Straight Jackets Magazine. Do we have anyone from Straight Jackets here? I know Ellen's on vacation. She emailed me and said she wasn't going to make it. Cheryl,
Sandy's here.
Sandy, do you have an update on when the next issue will be coming out? Are you there, Sandy? She's the newest member of the editors team. So she's probably, I don't even know if she's listening at the moment. Sandy? Okay, we can come back to you if you have one. Okay, member successes. If you have something that has been published since the last meeting, or you've started a new project, or you got an agent, or some other milestone, or just have a writing related announcement that you'd like to make, I would really appreciate if you come to the mic. If you are on Zoom, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute, or you can unmute yourself at that point and make an announcement. Anybody in the room who has a writing related, come on up here, Greg. Right there.
I hope that's better. Last month's meeting, I think I mentioned that KDP was increasing their printing costs on the 20th of this month. And so anybody who was interested in that should probably have ordered extra author copies of their books or whatever, or rush through to get something ready for publication before that time so you could get your author copies back. That's what I did. For the last 6 months or so, I've been trying to go back and look at some of my earlier work and re-edit and resubmit to KDP and get some of those author copies back with the corrections that I made, which I did, and I got the big box of stuff back. I also had a project that I'd been working on, since my sister's death back in 2007. I say working on, but I really wasn't working that hard on it. It just sort of sat there languishing on my computer in a file. When I found that it was going to be an increase in the printing costs for KDP, because I have a number of books through Amazon on that, I decided, since this particular work had a lot of color images that I wanted to include, and color printing is, as some of you probably know, if you print one page in color, the entire book is charged the color price per page. So anyhow, I put together this thing, and the title of it is Email from the Edge. You might remember some years ago, postcards from the edge, that sort of thing. Well, anyhow, my sister passed away from colon cancer back in 2007. She had dealt with the problem since 1999. And I hadn't realized how many individual emails, some of them fairly lengthy, we had shared during that 7-year time period when she first was diagnosed to when she finally passed away. So I decided that I finally would come to terms with that and put together all these emails. So I went back, and this has been over the last few years, and I went back and I pulled all those emails and combined them, her email to me, my email back to her, threw in a bunch of nonsense that probably no one in the right mind cares anything about, but it ended up being a little book. And so I compiled and edited this thing quickly before the cost of the printing went up, and ordered some copies. So that's what I've come up with. And I included some of her artwork because while she was suffering from cancer, it seemed like her art accelerated. And she ended up working with another group of cancer survivors up in the Alaska area where she lived. And so to me, I call it kind of a memoir of sorts because I'm not really writing it as a book. It's just a collection of our emails back and forth to one another. Whether it has any interest to anyone else, I don't know, but it's available on Amazon right now.
Thank you. Have you sent that in to both Lynette and to the website?
No, Lynette works 1 month in, I will for June. I got it in June, so I'll send it to her, but I didn't send it because she's working on the May stuff. Anyhow.
Thank you. I know we have more announcements in the room. Sam, you said you had an announcement. Could you come back to the mic? Anyone, while he's walking to the mic, does anyone on Zoom have an announcement? Raise your hand, wave at the camera. Lynette, help me because I'm trying to see everybody.
Well, I do know our speaker has a new book out. If she wants to plug it, Stephanie, unmute and go ahead.
Oh, thanks so much, Lynette. I always appreciate an opportunity to plug. My newish novel is Pretend Plumber, which has got a great cover. And this is, as you'll hear, a magical realist, mostly comical story about a young girl who is bi-curious, neurodivergent, and who gets so fed up with her wealthy Jewish family, she decides to run away and become a plumber. But her magic practicing grandmother has other ideas.
Hi, Kay Murphy couldn't be here today, but she asked me last night if I would mention the Cascadia Poetics Lab, which is a fun little project that they do once a year. Last year, we sent out postcards every day in August to a list of people that we got from the lab. Abigail and myself both participated last year, and we had a whole lot of fun doing it. And you also get postcards back. So I brought an album from last year, the postcards I received, that if you want to look at after the meeting, it'll be over here. So registration is going on now, I believe through the 3rd of July. It's still early bird registration, and it's $21. Abigail and I, we both registered last September or October. We jumped right on the bandwagon. We're ready to do the 17th annual. So if you want it, if you're interested, go to the Cascadia Poetics Lab.org website, and you can get that from me anytime after the meeting if you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
And the one I'm going to discuss today is Write What You Know. Okay, now let me say this, that advice was given by Mark Twain. Now, certainly he's given a lot of good advice. And in this case, it's not bad advice. It's just not always right. In his case, let's face it, he wrote Life on the Mississippi, Roughing It, both which he lived. Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn were set in Hannibal, Mississippi, and on the Mississippi River. Actually, Hannibal, Missouri, and it was on the Mississippi River. He knew those. But he himself violated his own advice when he wrote A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. He stepped out of himself to write that. In my own case, I'll put this on a personal level here. When I started writing, I wrote nonfiction articles for True West, and they were about real cowboys, Native Americans, outlaws who went into the movie business after they were, in certain cases, served their time in prison. Well, I had a master's degree in history. I loved the Old West. I'd read a lot about it. So I knew certain things there, and I used it to my advantage. I built up a resume. But when it came to writing fiction, my first novel was called Carney, A Novel in Stories, and it won the Next Generation Indie Book Award, the grand prize winner. And I got to go to New York, accept the honor, the whole thing. Now, what did I know about a Carney? Come on. I grew up in Texas, and there were a Carney. Yeah, I may have gone to one or two along the way. Now, my father's second and third wife, her name was Becky. She worked the Carney circuit, and maybe I heard a few stories from her. Okay, that's maybe is it. But what did I know about running a Carney? Well, I did my research, and I wrote about something I didn't know. Now, lots of writers have made successes, novelists, short story writers have made successes of writing about what they do know. Thomas Wolfe, for instance, who wrote Look Homeward Angel, Willa Cather, who wrote her novel set in Nebraska, where she lived for so many years. And they made quite successful novels, even classic novels based on what they knew. But what about those like, again, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, or any of your science fiction novels, or your fantasy, or your horror? Or in my case, my last two books have been Westerns. I never lived in the Panhandle. My last book was about, it happens in the Panhandle of Texas. It went in an area called the Llano Estacado, or the Staked Plains. I'd been through there a couple of times, but did I live there? No. I did my research. What did I know about being a African American in Texas in 1880? My narrator is a African American of mixed blood, African American in Texas in 1880. I stepped out of myself to write this, and I think that that's one of the advices that you have to take with a grain of salt. Write about what you know. Yes, you can, especially in fiction and nonfiction. You need to be at least have some idea of and knowledge of what you're writing. Fiction, no, I think you have to. There are times that you have to step out of yourself. If you don't, how can a man have a woman character and seem real in a book? How could I've forgotten his name, Goldstein or Goldman, who wrote Memoirs of a Geisha from the viewpoint of a Japanese geisha? Willa Cather in My Antonia wrote from a male's viewpoint. These are people who step out of themselves and write about what they don't know in many cases. But they do their research. They know a lot about human nature, and that's translated into the books. So when anybody ever tells you to write what you know, take it with a grain of salt. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is this one live? We'll do this one instead. So one of our first-time attendees, Marco, on Zoom, says he has an announcement. He got disconnected right when he was about ready to unmute and talk. So go on, Marco.
Hey guys, my name is Marco. Like I said, my very first time here. Glad to be here. Anyway, my announcement isn't too big, but after 2 years, I'm almost done with my first draft of my very first novel. It's been quite a long time coming. You know, I'm obviously still brand new to this, but just the fact that I'm almost done, it's a huge deal for me. I've been writing every day now for almost a month straight, so kind of got that writing habit going. So that's all I got for now, but I hope to keep learning the craft and keep going to these kind of meetings. So I'm excited.
Congratulations on the start. That's excellent. Welcome, and hopefully we'll see you next month as well. So we're going to move on now to our speaker introduction, and that is Lynette. Go ahead, Lynette, take it away.
Well, I am super, super, super excited that Stephanie's here. I took her class a couple times at the Writers Weekend at Mount Sac, and the fairy tale that I just finished started in her class. So she just I'm pumped. And I even got a sequel going now because other people wanted to see more of the characters. So Stephanie herself is a 7-time Pushcart Prize nominee in fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. She is the author of 2 poetry collections, 2 novels, a novelette, and How to Write Magical Realism craft book, which is really cool, guys. Pick it up. I just think that she's a lot of fun, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about her. I'm just going to turn it over to her so she can get going. You guys are really going to enjoy this. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Lynette. And hi, everybody in the Diamond Valley, which I've got to share with you all is the magical realism name par excellence. I saw that and went, Diamond Valley, is that where all the diamonds are born? And they grow up in Diamond Valley and then they get polished in high school, and once upon a time there was maybe a diamond that said, I don't want to shine like the others. That's one possibility. The other possibility is Diamond Valley is where all the Diamond family lives. And if you're a New Yorker, which I am, you know that there was a very famous Dr. Diamond in New York who was famous for giving the best nose job in the city. So does everybody in Diamond Valley have the Dr. Diamond nose? Just so many possibilities. Anyhow, you can see a little bit how my brain works. I am so thrilled to be with you all today. I just love sharing this work around magical realism because I'm someone who came to creative writing relatively late in life. I wrote secretly for many, many years. Then I got a PhD and taught at UC Riverside for a long time, but I really wanted to make stories and I didn't know how to do it. I was very well educated. I read a lot of stories. Mark Twain was mentioned. I've read Mark Twain. I've read Connecticut Yankee and others, but I didn't know how to make a story myself. And I had the pleasure of meeting two incredible teachers. One of them is Amy Bender, who is a well-known Los Angeles writer who writes short fiction and novels, and she is the person who introduced me to magical realism and writing kind of unreal fiction. The other teacher who I really need to give a shout out to is my MFA director, who was the person who helped me. Marco, I'm feeling you talking about your first novel. She helped me write my first novel. And her name is Kathleen Alcala. She lives in Seattle. She is Latinx. She is also a member of the Opata tribe, and she is also Jewish. So intersectional like crazy. And she is a brilliant novelist herself, magical realist, and an incredible teacher. Both of these people were incredible teachers, so I want to honor them anytime I share this work. So before I go any further, I don't know if it's possible to do this because I can see you all in the folks who are here live, but I'm curious to know who we got here. How many poets do we have in the audience? Raise your hand. Okay, I see. Michelle, I saw you doing this, which means, yes, I'm a poet, kind of, I guess. No? Okay, I'm going to write a story about this response. Okay, so we got a few poets. I see a poet over on the Zoom. Thank you. And Lynette. Okay, and how many memoir writers have we got here? Please raise your hand, stream people. Okay, and then how many fiction writers have we got? Okay, so the majority of y'all are fiction. Okay, very cool. Impressive. All righty, great, thank you. That helps me sort of understand where we're at. Great. Well, what I'd like to do now is just talk very quickly in the order of the talk. What is magical realism? How do I do it? Why do I care? So let's talk about what it is. As you know, you're all writers, you're all fiction writers, you're all readers, I'm sure. You know, there's a lot of argument going on about genres, about how genres work and what counts as fiction and what counts as memoir and what counts as this. And lots of very smart people argue about this all the time. Well, I'm not going to talk about that. most people agree that magical realism is two things. First of all, it's not a genre. It's actually a technique. You can find magical realism in just about any kind of narrative. That means any kind of work that tells a story. So movies, TV, short stories, screenplays, plays, and novels. A great example of a TV show that is a magical realist story it was a fantastic show. It was only on for 2 seasons. You can watch it on Hulu, and it's called Lodge 49. And it's about a weird kind of Masonic lodge type place. And it takes place perfectly in Long Beach, California. It's wonderful, and I really recommend it. Another example of a magical realist film is Pan's Labyrinth, which some of you maybe saw. Pan's Labyrinth is a textbook magical realist story. If you know the work of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you know that's kind of textbook magical realism. Okay. The other thing that magical realism does is it does something specific, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen. So those of you who can see me are going to see me making these strange faces as I look to share my screen, and we'll see if it works. It's always, host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay. Can I be made the co-host or a co-host? I will wait a little bit. And if we can't make it work, you'll miss seeing my wonderful turtles swimming. But I can do this without the share.
Yep.
Okay, I'm seeing that coming up. Thank you so much. I think I see it.
I thought I had it enabled.
No worries. No worries at all. So hopefully you can see my screen. Yes? Nod at me if you can see.
Yes.
So, well, awesome. So here's my turtle. I'm very excited about that. Okay, here's the turtle. A lot of disagreement about magical realism, but here's the main thing. And if you take nothing else away from my presentation, take away this. Magical realism juxtaposes the mundane and everyday, that's important, with one or more unreal or impossible elements, and intensifies that juxtaposition during the course of the story, novel, play, TV show, radio show for that matter, or film. Okay, so now we're going to do one of my absolute favorite writing exercises. So get out your writing devices, whatever those are, and this is going to be a guided free write, and just go with it. Somebody was talking earlier about writing what you don't know. Thank you so much for talking about that. That's a great segue into this. Okay, so here we go. And we're going to get Gabriel Garcia Marquez to help us, because let's get the best to help us. The best writers ever, which he certainly was. Okay, so I want you to make some lists. I want you to make a list of 10 things you normally find at the beach. Examples: beach ball, plastic bucket. And then when you've got a second, put one of your choices in the chat so other people can see it. And again, folks who are, I don't know if you have a blackboard or a whiteboard. I'm not sure.
All we have is the screen. So we don't have a blackboard or a whiteboard.
Okay, but so can you see, but can people in real time see the chat?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, awesome, great. Okay, I see rocks. Awesome. Sandcastles, great. That's a great one. Seashells. Trash. Excellent, Michelle. Yes. Land whales. Seaweed. Concession stands. That's a nice one. Crabs. And Kevin Kindle, I don't know if that's your real name, but what a great author name. Just saying. Yes, indeed, water. Indeed, water is what one finds at the beach. Great. I'm going to give everybody a couple more minutes. And you want to try to generate at least 5. And if you can generate more, great. I believe that more is more, particularly with generative writing. We're not editing. We're not trying to be the smartest person in the class, because we're all the smartest person in the class, obviously, because we're creatives. So whatever comes to your mind, put down on the list. Okay, and I'm trying to look at this little tiny stream box to look at people's, see where people are with this. Okay, I see a couple people looking up. Oh, Kevin Kindle, I'm so glad your name is real. That's just awesome. Surfboards. Yes, surfboards. They're great also. What a great item. They're amazing looking. Okay, so hopefully everyone's got at least 5. The next list is something completely different, literally. Make a list of 10 places that are as far from the beach geographically and or psychologically as you can get. Examples: FedEx office, dentist waiting room. And put one of those choices in the chat too when you have a second. Diamond Valley, well, yes. Death Valley, Mars. Yellowstone Park, desert. Train stations, awesome. That's an awesome one. Love that. There's so much going on at a train station. Usually. Unless it's closed, and then there's nothing going on in it. Okay, other places. Office, yes. Thank you, stream. Villain subterranean lair, haunted houses. I love the villain subterranean lair. This is why I love doing this, and I love having people share, because very different brains are at work here. Yeah, haunted house is great. Mars. Medieval castles. That's a nice one. Movie theater. And I don't know what the Mariana Trench is, but it sounds very promising. Anything that's a trench is interesting, because it's a little bit subterranean, but not quite. Okay, wonderful. Hopefully Japanese castles. Oh, I love how specific that is. And they are very distinctive looking. That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to give everybody just another minute to just jot down a few more. Thank you, Marco. Yeah, I love Japanese stuff too. And Japanese writing, Japanese literature. Haruki Murakami, magical realist. Oh, thank you, Daniel. That's what that trench is. Oh, that's a great one. Right. It's the deepest trench. Got it. Love it. That's a good one. Thanks for the explanation. Prison. Ohio. How true. The whole state is just the farthest thing we can think of from the beach. I love it. Kansas also. That's hilarious. Thank you so much, Catherine and Liam. Those I'm going to be laughing all day about Ohio and Kansas. Okay, so moving on. Okay, on to the next thing. if I can get my thing to work here. Oops. Now let's write. Follow the directions as closely as you can. And this is really important. The story cannot end with it was all a dream or they realized they were just watching or acting in a movie. Okay, you can't end that way. So here's the first part of the exercise. Have someone or a small group of people discover one of the beach items from your list or from the chat in a non-beach place that you can take from your list or from the chat. So a beach item in a non-beach place, 2 to 3 sentences. And I'm going to try to keep track of the time here a little bit. Okay, I see the people in the front row of the stream looking up. So that looks like some people are done. What I would say here is finish your thought. If you're writing on paper, skip a couple of lines. If you're writing on a computer, make some room in case you want to fill that in later, and let's go on to the next piece. Okay, here's the next part. In the next couple of sentences, make the thing from the beach get bigger or smaller or change in some physical way. And again, that's just a couple of sentences. Okay, I see some people looking up and looking to see what other people have written, which is always fun to do. That's why it's fun to write in a group. Okay, let's move on. Again, make a couple spaces if you're writing on paper, or allow some space if you're writing on a screen, and let's go on to the next part. Change the reactions of the people who have found it in 2 to 3 sentences. Okie dokie. Going to move on to the next part. Change the beach thing again, 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, I see some heads bobbing up. So I'm going to go on to the next part. Oops. Bring in more people and make them have bigger and or different reactions. Again, 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next part. Change the thing one more time, 2 to 3 sentences. And I see people putting their hands to their heads and kind of looking around, because I'll bet you're starting to feel kind of bored by this exercise. And that's a great place to write from. Because when you're bored, you don't care. It's like, oh, whatever. When is this exercise? When is lunch? You guys are going to this amazing restaurant. Those of you who are there in real time, I'm very jealous. So you're thinking, okay, I want to have lunch. That's a great writing from being tired, being bored is a great space to write from, because your defenses are down. You're like, I don't know, whatever. And that's when something really interesting can happen. The whatever feeling. So 2 to 3 sentences, change the thing one more time. Okay, and we are close to the end. Here's the last part. Bring in someone from very far away who sees, experiences this thing for the first time from their own point of view. What do they say? Okay, and it looks like a few people are done. So while we're waiting for the rest of the gang to finish, if you're done, give your piece a title. Great. I'm actually going to stop my share so I can see you all a little better. Whee! Oh, that's better. Great. So finish your thought. And everybody, if you feel that you have more that you want to say, make some notes to yourself, type in some keywords, write some notes, however you're writing, just so you will remember, and then you can go back to it. Now, I'm not sure about the mechanics of how to do this in a hybrid class, but it would be great to hear a couple of these. If there's a way to do that.
Oh, yeah. People on Zoom can unmute and people in the room can go to the mic and read them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much, Michelle. Would somebody like to share theirs?
Bob, come on to the mic. Bob Norman.
Bob Norman, you're up.
Okay, here we go. They found a surfboard in the Mojave Desert that had no wax on it. As people watched, it turned into a 7-foot purple-skinned lizard. Everyone went from curious state of mind to frightened. The lizard rolled onto its back and became a wagon. A busload of tourists pulled over to the side of the road and started to take pictures. The wagon suddenly rose up on its rear wheels and twisted itself into an oil derrick. An old miner happened along, sees the people taking pictures, and in awe of the oil derrick, and says to every one of them, "You should have been here and seen what it was yesterday."
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. Those transformations, man, you really took that assignment and really went with it. Wow. Those were an amazing, that was an amazing sets of transformations. Loved that. And notice, everybody, how much felt like it was happening just because of that thing changing. The thing changes, people react. The thing changes, more people come in. Those of you writing novels, this is a great exercise as a way to kind of build tension and excitement through very simple procedures. And then that guy coming in, the old timer, coming in at the end and saying, this is what I see. This is what I think. And Bob, you handled that so beautifully. It's like, you think this is crazy. You should see what happened yesterday, which is wonderful, and which fulfills a fantastic function that magical realist fiction really aims to do, which is to not make a story a box, but to make a story a river. I'm imitating Michelle's movement here. Don't make a story a box, make it a river. So that the end, there was a Sam Shepard quote about this on Facebook, if you saw it. He said, the beginnings are exciting, the middle is a pain in the ass, excuse my language, and the end is a catastrophe. And I thought, well, I didn't know he hated endings. He said, the ending's gotta be a beginning. It's gotta feel like a beginning. And that's another way of putting that. And Bob, your story really went, oh, at the end. It's like, okay, well, if things are settling down, here comes the old timer. No, there are more possibilities. And what are they? And what did happen yesterday and the day before? Great job. I think, Daniel, were you nodding that you wanted to read? Would you like to unmute yourself and read yours?
Yeah, sure. Some of us have put our hands up. I see Lynette has one too, so you might look for that. Also, I was tempted to have a toilet appear in the desert, but that looks like it's been taken. So
there's infinite room for infinite numbers of toilets, just to be clear.
Yeah, okay, maybe next time. I called this the smoothing stone. Pacing his underground lair, Volta cursed as he stubbed his toe. He bent to inspect the offending item. Turning it over in his hand, the deep black rock dripped into his hand, wet with the smell of ocean water. A warm vibration passed from the rock to his hand. Startled, he dropped it to the floor. Curious, he picked it up again, using only 2 fingers. Its vibration heightened, becoming a sweet musical refrain. At the sound, Phoebe, his captive consort, slipped into the room. She wrinkled her nose. What is that disgusting smell? The stone glowed, faintly at first, then so brightly Volta had to drop it and shield his eyes. Volta silently called for Hyatar, his vizier, summoning him from Swaziland. In a puff of smoke, Hyatar appeared, startled and disoriented, but he dared not speak his anger at the interruption.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Daniel. Since you're working with in what feels like, because of the names, a fantasy context. The way that you use this exercise is to make that fantasy world feel very real, which you did. It's, the 2 fingers, the moisture, we're very grounded in the world. And thank you so much for sharing this, Daniel, because it's a wonderful exemplum of how, if you're writing fantasy, you've got to ground your reader in the world physically, with touch, smell, the annoyed consort. I love that. The captive, she may be a captive consort, but she's definitely got an opinion, which is very funny and which suggests, oh, well, who's in charge here? She might be. So that this kind of specificity, which really makes a fantasy world come alive, because we can relate to it. We can enter it. So thank you so much, Daniel. That was great. Lynette, would you like to read yours?
Sure. I can get the mute turned off here.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, it does. Okay, I'm going to show a little bit of my Montana and mountain here, but that's okay. So this is called The Blue Bison. The tour group stopped to watch Old Faithful do its thing. Since I'd seen the geyser so many times before, I decided to watch our backs in case one of the resident bison decided to flip a tourist into the air. I glanced along the edge of the boardwalk and locked eyes with an enormous bull with a string of seashells around its neck. As he moved from the shadows to the light, I could see that his coat was light blue. The bison drew nearer to our group, and he left a trail of sand dollars behind him. As strange as that seems, the thing that stuck most in my mind was the fact that the necklace never lacked at least 3 shells. Before he reached our group, the bull stopped moving forward and moved toward the parking lot. I couldn't resist. I followed at a safe distance, gathering sand dollars as I went. The sand dollars shrunk to the size of dimes as I picked them up, and I stuffed them in my pocket. The bull continued through the parked cars, shedding shells as he went. One of the parking lot workers yelled out at me, "Hey, no messing with the wildlife." I paused and tried to think of a witty reply. He obviously had not seen the trail of shells across the ground. He stalked towards me holding a trash bag. "Stop that littering. I can fine you, you know." The remaining shells on the ground melted as if they were made of ice. I tried to scramble to get a few more before they were gone. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten about the bison at this point, since the lot worker was still headed my way. As he passed near the end of the cars, I heard another sound. "Mommy, seashells! Let's grab some!" I heard a squeal of delight coming from behind me, followed by the sound of children's feet slapping against the pavement. I quit worrying about picking up seashells and looked around for the bull.
Oh, that came out great. I love it. Oh my goodness. Oh, those kids' voices. Those kids' voices. Oh, it's such that bringing in that other voice, that other perspective. It is magic. It was wonderful. And it's like they see them too. Wow.
Yeah.
I love how again, I love having people read because, again, same exercise, everyone. Same exercise, 3 completely different stories, completely different. So you don't need to worry about being original ever, right? The point is to hook into the things you care about. Maybe you don't need to write about what you know, but you do need to write about what you care about, one way or the other. And when you do that, your story is going to be original, because Lynette's, Daniel's, and Bob's stories felt completely different, exact same structure, exact same maneuvers, completely different stories. I loved how intimate yours was, Lynette, and this real connection that the eye feels with the bison, and this, really wanting to do this caretaking, collect these sand dollars, and then this worker who totally doesn't understand. That's a huge conflict that you created there. It's big and it feels serious. And then thank goodness the kids come along. Thank goodness the kids come along. It's kind of saving the day. Yes, Daniel, what'd you want to say?
I like the little allusion to inflation where the sand dollars are shrinking to dimes.
Yes, right, absolutely. And which was not Lynette standing on a soapbox talking about the economy, but it just happens because of the story. As Daniel, your very interesting kind of gender interplay between these 2 people is quite complicated, but it isn't you standing on a soapbox saying, well, let's talk about feminism, let's talk about men and women. You're not, because it happens through the story. Same thing with Bob, development, quote unquote, settling the West. What's happened to the West? Those of us on the left coast really care about this. And again, but Bob's not standing on a soapbox saying, too much tourism and people don't appreciate the land, and what about what's happened to the Old West? He isn't doing that. It happens through the story. And I guess I wanted to sort of end with, again, why, okay, this is what magical realism is. This is how you do it. And why do I care? I think we've seen through these 3 examples why you care. My wonderful teacher, Kathleen Alcala, has argued, and I think she's got a point, that magical realism is by its nature politically progressive. because it emphasizes, it makes the unseen visible and makes the things we don't want to talk about literal. And if we've been talking, certainly this is what Gabriel Garcia Marquez is all about. This exercise, by the way, is modeled on a beautiful story by him. And I hope someday I can write a story as beautiful. And it's called The Handsomest Drowned Man in the World. And I'll put the title in the chat. It's incredibly beautiful. It's about little kids who find a dead body on the beach, which sounds like, what the heck is this going to be? It's incredible. I feel changed from reading that story. He's all about making the unseen seen, and the ending of that story is just killer. It's just killer. I've mentioned some other people. I've mentioned Amy Bender. I've mentioned Haruki Murakami, who writes about very Japanese political history, atrocity, writes about very difficult topics with this very light touch through the use of magical realism. Mohsin Hamid is an amazing British Pakistani novelist who has one magic thing in his book. Again, I'll put it in the chat. One magic thing, just one. And the book becomes a story about homelessness, about being an exile, about living in the diaspora. It becomes an incredibly complex, interesting book. So that I think that's one of the reasons, if we're interested in progressive values, this is your technique, because it gets you off the soapbox and gets it just happening through the course of the story. My book actually, it's funny, but it has a big social justice theme in it that I couldn't get to through using standard realism. I couldn't get at it. But through use of magic, I was able to get at the themes that I feel passionate about, which are LGBTQIA rights, happy Pride, everybody, and immigration justice. And those of us who live on the left coast certainly know about the issues at the border. And I get, through magical realism, I'm able to touch on some of those concepts, and that gives me great joy. But I think there's a final point that I want to make before we're out of time, is I think that magical realism also, and I think we could feel that particularly with Lynette's piece, using magical realism allows us to get at emotions and emotional experiences that we can't get at very easily using just straight realism. I mean, some people can do it. Hemingway can do it, bless his heart. But I think many of us struggle to get at that, those complex emotions, those complex tensions between people, the people we love most, the people we've lost, the people we hate. And hate is complicated too, but magical realism allows us to kind of become Houdinis, one of my role models, who through, again, his magic, which was an illusion, to make things disappear and reappear and create. I'm sure everyone has been to a wonderful magic show, maybe as a child, maybe as an adult, and that magic trick happens and you just go, it's wonder, surprise, that feeling of awe, which is really complicated. It's, joy and sadness, and the thing is gone, and this is not possible. Don't we all want to create wonder in our audiences? Don't we want our readers to go, this is what's happening in Daniel's book. This is what's happening in Bob's. This is what's happening in Marco's book. This is what's happening in Lynette's book. I'm so glad I came. I'm so glad I showed up for this book, because I got to experience that. And I think that's what magical realism can do. So that is my presentation. I'm going to put my newsletter address in the chat. And I hope you'll stay in touch with me, and welcome to Magical Realism Writing. I hope you'll really work with this and have fun with it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming to present. What an amazing, amazing exercise and presentation. I think we're all transformed because of that. So, Lynette, do you have any last words on this? As far as, did you put in the Zoom and in the chat how to reach out to Stephanie if they're interested in taking classes or anything of that nature?
I will certainly do that. And Stephanie, if you want to put any special links in there, go ahead. I did find a copy of The Handsomest Drowned Man and put a link there in the chat in case somebody wants to read that story. It's a good one. Yeah. And I know, Stephanie, you're on Facebook also, as well as having a website. And I'm not sure what other social media you're on, but go ahead and put those in there so we can connect with you.
Okay, so here is Sophia Barber to tell us about our speaker for next month.
Hello. So for next month's meeting, we'll be hearing from Jan Herman, who is a retired physician and author of The Last Cowboy, who spoke for the Inland Empire chapter of the California Writers Club. He will be speaking on myths versus realities of the Old West, using many examples from classic Western movies, TV shows, as well as his own novel. He was highly recommended, so we're so happy to have him speak for us next month.
And you know, I may have messed up. Stephanie, you didn't say whether you're going to take questions or not. Did you want to take questions before we?
Oh, I'm happy to take questions. I just didn't want to, I knew I only had till 11, so I didn't want to take up too much time. I'm happy to answer questions for a few minutes, for sure.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Stephanie? Jim's coming to the mic while he's making his way. Is there anyone on Zoom that has a question?
If you're on Zoom, go ahead either and put it in the chat or raise your hand if you want to do it. If you don't want to say it out loud, I'll read it out the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to say first. This on? Okay, I want to say first, terrific presentation. Question for you. My wife and I met Isabella Allende a couple of times, and once she said after she wrote Daughter of Fortune, and Daughter of Fortune has no magical realism in it, and we posed the question, why not? You know. And she said, well, she thought that magical realism was such a South American kind of not genre, but really connected to South America, that she thought once she moved to America and was writing, even though she was still writing in Spanish, she thought that she would drop that because it was so connected with that. I know some Americans are writing it, Alice Hoffman especially. You have any response to what Isabella Allende would say?
Well, I certainly would never fight with Ms. Allende. I mean, I would never do that. However, what I will share is, and again, we could do a whole talk about this, but actually the history of the term magical realism is, and this always makes me laugh because I found out recently that I have German DNA. Didn't know it, but I love things German, and that's why. The term is coined by a German academic. These Germans, they're always calling, they're always creating categories. And it's an art historian term, not a literary term. And I'm embarrassed to say I'm forgetting which artist this art critic was talking about, but that's what he was talking about, kind of pictorial art. So the term is coined by a European, and I'll point out now that I've announced my Germanness, that there's a tremendous interest in German culture for years and years and years in folklore and fairy tales, aka Grimm's fairy tales. So that arguably this is a kind of writing that people have been doing for a long time, everywhere. Not just Latin America, South America, and not just Europe, but everywhere. There's a wonderful story, and I'm so sorry, I'm having a senior moment. I'm blanking on the name of the author. Story written in early 20th century China called Diary of a Madman, and it's magical realism. So that it's this kind of juxtaposition again of the real and the unreal. So not fantasy, not fairy tale, but somehow using these two things together is something that we kind of see in world literature happening everywhere, which raises an interesting question as to well, it's always dangerous to make universalist assumptions, but it seems to be something that we like to do as storytellers. So that's my, I guess, sort of fuzzy response to you. But thank you for pointing that out, because, and again, I think the other thing I can say is that you may not want to use magical realism for every project. I mean, getting back to Ms. Allende, sometimes realism works. You know, sometimes realism is enough, and sometimes a complete fairy tale is enough, and sometimes fantasy is what you want to do. And my thing is, I kind of think if you want to write it all, you should write it all. If you want to write poetry, nonfiction, fiction, magical realism, a mystery novel. My next book is a mystery novel, although there's magic in it. Do it. So that's my answer. Thank you for that question. It's a great one.
And Marco, you have a question. Do you want me just to read it, or do you want to talk to Stephanie directly?
Yeah, my only question was whether magical realism always had to be politically progressive, like you just said, Stephanie, because I feel like that would make it a very limiting subgenre of fantasy, which is a genre I feel like you could literally explore any idea in. Or just, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Marco. Again, I think that certainly at its best, magical realist fiction, and I think it's true for fiction in general, fiction doesn't preach at you. I mean, that's something, that's what your minister, imam, rabbi, does maybe, or your various political candidates. And we certainly have had a lot of experience of everybody preaching a lot at us. But I think, thank God, art doesn't do that. Art, and I'm really idealistic. I love art. I've been teaching about literature for billions of years. I love making it. The very controversial author Peter Handke, who won the Nobel Prize recently, very controversial Austrian author, said a long time ago, he said literature is romantic. And his point is that literature doesn't have a political axe to grind. It's not about that. That said, I think that political issues and moral issues are going to emerge from the writing, because we're writing in our historical moment, and we're writing surrounded by, for example, inflation. So that's going to come, and surrounded by injustice. Those concerns are going to come in to what we write. But I think that's part of the reason why so many people, Marco, love fantasy, is because we leave the real world, we get away from the soapboxes, but we get to experience those issues in a fresh way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. And you're right. Fantasy does allow people to, take a step back from, our world and kind of present ideas to people in a different light.
Right. Absolutely.
It's something that I've noticed in all the fantasy I've read, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else? They're either shy or they're very knowledgeable and don't have a single question. Okay, that being said, do you have any final words for everyone, Stephanie, before we let you go?
Oh, sure. Final words. Wow, I feel so powerful. It's like, well, everyone, I just hope I'm so excited by the writing energy in this group. And I'm sorry I'm not with you in real time so that I could really absorb it. But this is such an enthusiastic, committed group of writers, and I could totally feel that. And it's just so wonderful to visit this community. And I hope you'll really continue writing and publishing.
Well, thank you once again. What an amazing, amazing presentation. Everybody give a round of applause, please. And without further ado, we'll be back in this room on the 3rd Saturday of July with our Western Mythos speaker. And we do have reservations at 12 o'clock at Emilio's restaurant. Anyone live here is welcome to come. Anybody who can get on a plane real quick or a car and wants to drive here from wherever you're at on Zoom, you're also more than welcome, although we may be gone by then. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Until next month.